The sun, a relentless painter of the New Mexico desert, was just beginning to streak the vast sky with hues of tangerine and rose. In the quiet railway town, a place where time seemed to stretch and thin like worn leather, the rhythmic clatter of an approaching train was a daily constant. Yet, this metallic symphony was always accompanied by another, far more poignant ritual, one that had unfolded with unwavering precision for 11 long years. Every morning, as the distant whistle pierced the stillness, thunder, a magnificent coal-black stallion, would emerge from the dusty outskirts. He moved with a quiet dignity, his powerful frame a stark silhouette against the rising light, his destination always the same, the weathered wooden platform of the rail station. Townspeople, a tapestry of weathered faces and deep-set eyes, would pause their morning chores, their gazes following Thunder's solitary walk. There was a mix of awe and sorrow in their expressions, a silent testament to an animal's unwavering loyalty that transcended even death. They understood it was about grief, a profound connection to Elias, the cowboy who had ridden Thunder through countless sunsets and sunrises, a man long since gone from this world. But what they understood was only a fraction of the truth, a surface ripple hiding the deep churning currents beneath. Thunder's daily pilgrimage wasn't just a lament, it was a silent accusation, a question echoing through the very bones of the town, revealing the stubborn persistence of an unfulfilled promise, an unresolved injustice that refused to be forgotten. Into this tableau of quiet observance stepped Lily, a young social worker with eyes that missed nothing and a spirit that refused to accept the easy answers. New to the arid expanse of New Mexico, she watched Thunder's unwavering vigil, her reaction distinct from the town's communal, resigned empathy. Lily saw not just a grieving animal, but a profound, unsolved puzzle, a living testament to something deeply amiss. A calculated determination ignited within her, a spark that told her this horse held more than just sorrow in his steady gaze. He held a secret, a story waiting to be told. Her decision was swift, born of an innate sense of justice that hummed beneath her professional demeanor. She would investigate the horse's enduring ritual, convinced there was far more to it than simple, though profound, grief. This wasn't merely about a horse waiting for a ghost. It was about the living legacy of a man and the unspoken circumstances of his departure. Her decision, though quiet, subtly challenged the town's long-held complacency, its comfortable acceptance of a narrative that, in hindsight, felt incomplete. Lily was preparing to unearth buried truths, to disturb the settled dust of years, knowing that justice, though delayed, often rides in on the most unexpected hoovies. Her first steps led her to the town's dusty archives, a small forgotten room behind the general store, smelling of aged paper and forgotten lives. She began sifting through faded ledgers and brittle newspaper clippings, her initial inquiries stirring faint whispers among the oldest residents. Each conversation, each unearthed document painted a clearer picture. Thunder's quest was not a habit, but a plea. Lily's quest would unravel far more than just a horse's enduring loyalty. It would expose the true reason for Thunder's unwavering vigil, a revelation poised to shake the very foundations of this quiet, sun-baked community. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Long before Lily arrived, this dusty stretch of New Mexico was home to Elias Vance, a cowboy whose spirit was as vast and untamed as the ochre-dusted earth he walked. The sky above his head was a canvas of endless blue, painted with the slow, deliberate strokes of passing clouds, while cactuses stood like silent sentinels guarding the secrets of the arid landscape. His town, a small, unassuming cluster of buildings, owed its very existence to the steel veins of the railway that sliced through the desert, a transient hub where the rhythmic clatter of approaching trains brought fleeting whispers of the world beyond. It was a close-knit community, where traditions were woven into the daily fabric of life, and gossip often traveled faster than the telegraph wires strung across the poles. Elias was a man forged by the land, his strong, calloused hands accustomed to the reins of a horse and the feel of rough leather. His eyes, deep-set and thoughtful, held both the vastness of the desert and a quiet intensity that spoke of an unwavering connection to his surroundings. He lived simply, his days dictated by the rhythm of sunrise and sunset, spent ranching, mending fences, and coaxing a living from the stubborn earth. His most constant companion, his shadow and his soulmate, was Thunder, a magnificent Mustang whose coat shimmered like polished obsidian. Their bond was not merely that of rider and steed, it was a profound partnership, forged in shared sunrises, whispered secrets, and the unspoken language of two beings perfectly attuned. Thunder wasn't just a horse. He was an extension of Elias himself, a silent confidant through every season of life. Despite his humble existence, Elias harbored dreams larger than his small ranch. He yearned for a better future, perhaps a small family to share his legacy, a secure prosperity that would lift him above the daily struggle for survival. For Elias, the railway wasn't just a means of transport, it was a shimmering promise, a pathway to prosperity, a gateway to a life that transcended the limitations of his isolated world. Yet, this very hope, intertwined with his trusting nature, also made him vulnerable. He saw the best in people, unburdened by the cynicism that often hardened others in that harsh land. His lack of formal schooling meant he relied on instinct and the spoken word, believing a handshake to be as binding as any legal document. He possessed a deep-seated desire for connection, a yearning for something more substantial than solitude. It was this potent combination of ambition and innocence that drew Elias into a fateful arrangement, one that would irrevocably alter his destiny. A man named Silas Thorne, smooth-talking and impeccably dressed, arrived in town on one of those very trains, his eyes gleaming with an opportunism Elias couldn't yet discern. Thorne, a shrewd businessman with connections to the burgeoning cattle markets back east, saw not just Elias's land, but his integrity, as a valuable asset. He spun tales of a grand venture, a new cattle route that would utilize the railway to open up unprecedented markets, promising Elias a substantial portion of the profits. Enough, Thorne assured him, to secure his future beyond his wildest dreams. The train station, initially a symbol of general hope, now became central to this specific, intoxicating promise. It was designated as the point of exchange, the place where the first, crucial payment would arrive, signaling the beginning of their shared prosperity. Elias, with his heart full of burgeoning hopes, shared every detail with Thunder. He would talk to the horse for hours, describing the future he envisioned, the secure life he imagined for himself and his kin. Thunder, with his intelligent eyes and patient demeanor, seemed to understand, mirroring Elias's quiet excitement, becoming a silent, four-legged partner in these grand plans. This deep, almost telepathic bond between them explains why Thunder's loyalty would transcend death. The horse had absorbed Elias's expectations, his dreams, his very essence. When those dreams were shattered, Thunder's spirit refused to let go, his daily pilgrimage becoming not just an act of grief, but a continuation of Elias's unfulfilled vigil, a silent, unwavering expectation for a promise that never arrived. Elias, for all his quiet strength and deep connection to the land, carried a heart as vast and open as the New Mexico sky, a vulnerability that would ultimately become his undoing. His early days were marked by a boundless optimism, especially concerning the railway that promised to bridge his isolated world with distant horizons. This hope, however, was slowly eroded by a series of accumulated emotional cracks, subtle at first, then widening into gaping chasms of disappointment. The seeds of his heartbreak were sown not in a single dramatic betrayal, but in a relentless succession of broken promises, each one chipping away at his trusting nature. There was the promise of a lucrative land deal, whispered to him by a slick-tongued prospector who spoke of silver veins just beyond Elias's modest property. The prospector swore he'd send a telegram from the next rail stop, confirming the funds that would transform Elias's dusty ranch into a thriving enterprise. Elias waited, day after day, by the tracks, Thunder a silent, patient sentinel beside him, but no telegram ever arrived, no funds materialized. Only the mocking whistle of passing trains, carrying away his dreams of prosperity. Then came the heart-wrenching pledge from a young woman, a drifter who had captivated his earnest soul, promising to return on the eastbound train, a new life waiting for them both. Elias built a small, hopeful home, painted it a vibrant blue, and for weeks he'd ride Thunder to the station, scanning every face that disembarked, his heart leaping with each approaching engine, only to sink with each departing one. She never returned, leaving behind only the ghost of a shared dream and the bitter taste of unfulfilled longing. Beyond these grand deceptions were the veiled humiliations, the quiet slights that chipped away at Elias's dignity. Townsfolk, aware of his simple, unadorned dreams, would sometimes exchange knowing glances when he spoke of his plans for a better future, a subtle smirk or a dismissive wave that suggested his aspirations were naive, even foolish. He was a man of the earth, his hands calloused, his speech unrefined, and in the eyes of some, easily taken advantage of. There was the incident with the new saloon owner, who, sensing Elias's gentle nature, shortchanged him on a cattle sale, then laughed it off as a misunderstanding when Elias, too proud to cause a scene, simply walked away, the sting of injustice burning within him. These weren't overt acts of cruelty, but rather a slow, insidious erosion of his self-worth, each instance adding another invisible burden to his spirit. manipulation, and injustice shadowed his later years. A local land baron, eager to expand his own holdings, subtly pressured Elias into selling a vital water right, twisting legal jargon and exploiting Elias's lack of formal education. The baron made it seem like a fair deal, a necessary step for the town's progress, but Elias knew in his gut he was being robbed, his ancestral connection to the land severed for a paltry sum. He saw his meager savings dwindle, his dreams for a small, independent ranch fading into the arid dust. The railway, once a conduit of boundless possibility, gradually transformed in Elias's mind from a symbol of hope and connection into a relentless reminder of waiting, of expectation, and ultimately, of profound disappointment. Each broken promise, each veiled humiliation, each calculated injustice added another layer of emotional weight to the train station, turning its rhythmic arrival and departure into a symphony of dashed hopes. The audience now understands that Thunder's ritual isn't merely a reaction to Elias's death, but a profound, instinctual response to a lifetime of accumulated emotional wounds. It was a specific, devastating betrayal, an unfulfilled promise tied inextricably to the railway station that culminated shortly before Elias's passing. The event hinted at in Part 1 was not an isolated incident, but the final, crushing blow that broke Elias's spirit, leaving him with nothing but a broken heart and a loyal horse who would forever wait for what never came. The final crushing blows had landed, but the immediate aftermath for Elias was not one of quiet resignation. Instead, the period leading up to his death became an agonizing, drawn-out struggle against an increasingly hostile world. The dream of a new life with the young woman, shattered by her non-arrival, festered into a raw, open wound. He tried to rationalize, to hope against hope, even riding Thunder to the station a few more times, a desperate plea for a miracle that never came. His conversations with the land baron, once veiled in false cordiality, now devolved into bitter, one-sided arguments. Elias, his voice cracking with a mix of desperation and righteous anger, would plead for a reconsideration of the water rights sale, explaining how it crippled his ability to sustain his small ranch. But the baron, a man whose wealth had insulated him from empathy, merely waved a dismissive hand, citing signed contracts and legalities, his eyes cold and unyielding. The saloon owner, when confronted again about the short-changed cattle payment, simply chuckled, implying Elias was a fool for pressing the issue, his indifference a sharper sting than any direct insult. These intensifying conflicts weren't confined to private confrontations. The small, close-knit community of the railway town, always quick to observe and even quicker to judge, began to whisper. Elias, once a respected if quiet figure, was now seen through a lens of pity, tinged with scorn. Poor Elias, they'd murmur in the general store, always chasing rainbows. Should have known better than to trust a drifter, others would comment, their words like tiny sharp stones thrown at his already bruised spirit. His relatives, distant and pragmatic, offered not solace but unsolicited advice, urging him to cut his losses and move on, failing to grasp the profound emotional investment he had made. The isolation deepened, not just from the antagonists, but from the very people who should have offered support. He felt like a spectacle, his misfortunes laid bare for public consumption, amplifying his sense of shame and inadequacy. The posture of those who had wronged him hardened with Elias's increasing desperation. The land baron, emboldened by Elias's inability to fight back effectively, began to subtly undermine his remaining property, rerouting irrigation channels, making it even harder for Elias to maintain his small patch of land. It was a calculated, slow suffocation of his livelihood, ensuring that Elias would never recover from the initial injustice. The memory of the drifter, meanwhile, became a phantom antagonist, a constant, nagging reminder of a future that had been stolen. Every time a train whistle blew, it wasn't just a sound. It was an echo of a broken promise, a cruel melody of what might have been, played on the strings of his shattered heart. The world seemed to conspire against him, each person, each memory, each circumstance tightening the invisible noose around his spirit. Elias experienced a profound emotional suffocation. His once vibrant dreams for a better life, for a shared future, for a secure ranch, crumbled into dust, leaving behind only the arid landscape of despair. He would sit for hours on his porch, staring out at the vast New Mexico sky, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on him. His spirit, once resilient, was worn thin, frayed at the edges by constant disappointment and betrayal. He felt trapped, caught in a net of circumstances he couldn't escape, with no path forward and no way back. The train station, once a beacon of hope, a gateway to a new beginning, now stood as a mocking monument to his greatest failures. Its daily rhythm of arrivals and departures, once a promise, had transformed into a relentless, agonizing reminder of what was promised but never delivered. This period of intense psychological toll, of relentless emotional pain and unyielding pressure, led directly to the tragic circumstances of Elias's death. The official records might have cited a simple, natural cause or an unfortunate accident, but those who truly knew him, those who saw the light dim in his eyes, understood it was the culmination of a broken spirit. Thunder, his loyal companion, felt it too. An intuitive understanding of his master's profound sorrow. The horse's instinctual mirroring of Elias's pain was not a response to a single event, but to the crushing weight of a lifetime of accumulated disappointments, culminating in that final, devastating betrayal at the railway station. Thunder's daily vigil, therefore, was not merely grief for a lost master, but a profound, unyielding protest against the injustice that had consumed Elias's last days. A silent, powerful testament to a promise that remained unfulfilled. Lily pushed through days of dusty archives, her fingers stained with the grime of forgotten histories, her mind a relentless engine of inquiry. She interviewed reluctant elders, their memories clouded by time and a collective desire to leave painful chapters undisturbed. Yet, with each hesitant whisper, each faded photograph, a clearer picture of Elias began to emerge, one far more complex than the town's simple narrative of a grieving cowboy. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered and seemingly unrelated, slowly started to coalesce around a single, powerful figure, Silas Thorne. The very same Silas Thorne, now a revered pillar of the community, whose family still held vast tracts of land and wielded significant influence. Lily felt a prickle of unease, a cold premonition of the darkness she was about to unearth. Her breakthrough came not from a dramatic confession, but from a mundane, almost overlooked artifact. Tucked away in a decaying box marked Unresolved Estates within the county clerk's office, Lily discovered a brittle, yellowed document, an unregistered deed of escrow. It was dated just weeks before Elias's death, detailing a final, substantial payment contingent upon the sale of his remaining water rights to Silas Thorne. This payment was not a simple transaction. It was Elias's last, desperate bid to save his small, struggling ranch, a sum that would have allowed him to pay off crippling debts and secure a future, however humble. The document stipulated that the funds, critical for his survival, were to be delivered via railway express, a method Silas Thorne had specifically insisted upon, citing secure transportation. The devastating revelation hit Lily with the force of a physical blow. Further cross-referencing with railway manifests from that period, painstakingly pieced together from fragmented ledgers, revealed a chilling truth. The funds, a substantial amount that would have been Elias's salvation, were indeed dispatched. However, they were intercepted. Not by chance, not by accident, but by a carefully orchestrated deception. Silas Thorne, using his influence and connections, had arranged for the package clearly addressed to Elias to be diverted. It was signed for not by Elias, but by a distant relative of Thorne's, a man known for his quiet loyalty to the Baron and who had mysteriously left town shortly after Elias's death. This wasn't merely a broken promise from a fleeting lover or a general misfortune. This was a calculated act of financial ruin, an intentional severing of Elias's last lifeline. Silas Thorne had not just exploited Elias's lack of education or his trusting nature. He had actively conspired to strip him of everything he had, leaving him utterly destitute and heartbroken. The train station, once a symbol of Elias's boundless hope for a fresh start, became the very crucible of his despair. It was the place where his last chance was meant to arrive, and the place where it was deliberately stolen from him. Thunder's daily pilgrimage was suddenly cast in a new, profoundly tragic light. The horse was not simply grieving for his lost master, he was waiting. Waiting for the delivery that never came, for the justice that was denied. Thunder's unwavering vigil was a silent, powerful testament to Elias's profound betrayal, an undying hope for a return or a delivery that never materialized. He was, in essence, waiting for Elias's justice, for the truth to arrive on the tracks that had once promised so much, only to deliver an unbearable void. This discovery broke the cycle of passive observation that had enshrouded the town for 11 years. Lily now possessed the undeniable evidence, the crucial means to bring this long-buried truth to light. The narrative had shifted irrevocably from a poignant mystery to an impending reckoning. The town's perception of Elias, the quiet cowboy they had mourned with a mix of pity and detached reverence, was about to be shattered. His death was no longer a tragic accident or the result of a broken heart. It was the direct consequence of a deliberate, cruel act. The community, long complacent in its ignorance, was on the precipice of confronting a past far darker and more culpable than anyone had dared to imagine. A past that would forever redefine their understanding of loyalty, justice, and the silent vigil of a horse named Thunder. The devastating truth, unearthed from dusty ledgers and whispered confessions, settled heavily upon Lily's shoulders, a burden far weightier than any she had anticipated. Elias's story, once a mere puzzle, had transformed into a searing indictment of a town's collective silence, a community's unwitting complicity. She grappled with a profound emotional turmoil, the initial thrill of discovery quickly giving way to a gnawing dread. Was it right to tear open old wounds, to shatter the fragile peace that had settled over generations? The faces of the townspeople, etched with a quiet sorrow as they watched Thunder's daily vigil, now flashed in her mind, each gaze a potential source of accusation or resentment. A wave of righteous anger, hot and sharp, would surge through her, fueled by Elias's profound injustice, only to be tempered by a deep-seated fear of the disruption she was about to unleash. Yet, beneath it all, a stronger sense of responsibility solidified. Elias deserved more than a forgotten grave. He deserved the truth, and Thunder, in his unwavering loyalty, was waiting for her to deliver it. The tremors of Lily's discovery began subtly, like distant thunder, before rumbling through the quiet streets. The town's residents reacted in a kaleidoscope of ways, each response a reflection of their own past, their own secrets. Some, particularly the elderly, burdened by decades of guilt or half-remembered knowledge, tentatively rallied around Lily. Old man Santiago, his eyes watery with age and regret, shared tales of Elias's gentle spirit, of the land baron's avarice, and of the young woman who had promised a new life. He spoke of the shame he'd felt, knowing the truth but lacking the courage to speak it. These fragile allies, their voices hushed but firm, offered not just support, but missing pieces of the story, filling in the blanks, lending credence to Lily's findings. They saw in her a chance for atonement, a path to finally lay Elias's troubled spirit to rest. Conversely, others became defensive, their resistance stiffening like the sun-baked earth. Mayor Thompson, whose family had long-standing ties to the land baron now exposed, subtly attempted to discredit Lily, dismissing her findings as old gossip and stirring up trouble. Whispers circulated, painting Lily as an outsider, a meddler bent on disrupting their peaceful existence. These resistors, fearing the upheaval that the truth would bring to their established lives and carefully constructed reputations, clung fiercely to the comfortable, sanitized narrative of Elias's accidental death. They preferred the quiet, collective grief to the uncomfortable, communal shame, their eyes hardening with suspicion whenever Lily's name was mentioned. The strong sense of tradition and the quiet reluctance to confront painful truths, deeply ingrained in New Mexico's small-town culture, profoundly influenced these reactions. For generations, the community had valued harmony above all else, often at the cost of buried injustices. Some clung to the old narratives, finding comfort in the familiar, even if it was a lie. To admit the truth about Elias was to admit their own collective failure, their own silent complicity in his suffering. Yet, for others, particularly those who had harbored their own quiet doubts, the revelation ignited a profound sense of communal shame and a burgeoning desire for atonement, a yearning to finally right a decades-old wrong. The psychological impact on the town was deep and unsettling. The comfortable facade of communal grief for Elias, a shared sorrow that had united them in a superficial way, was utterly shattered. In its place emerged the uncomfortable reality of a long-standing injustice, a betrayal that had festered beneath the surface for 11 years. The collective burden of unfulfilled promises, of a life tragically cut short by deceit, weighed heavily on every soul. The town was forced to confront its past, its secrets, and its own unwitting complicity in Elias's suffering. The daily sight of Thunder at the station, once a poignant symbol of loyalty, now became a stark, undeniable reminder of a truth that could no longer be ignored. A silent accusation echoing through the very heart of their community. The uncomfortable truth, once a mere whisper, now roared through the dusty streets, demanding a reckoning. The land baron, whose family had for generations wielded quiet influence and accumulated wealth through questionable means, found his carefully constructed legacy crumbling. There was no grand arrest, no dramatic courtroom scene. The justice delivered was far more profound and insidious. His name, once spoken with deference, became synonymous with deceit and heartlessness. Businesses, once eager for his patronage, subtly distanced themselves. Invitations to community gatherings ceased. His children, once proud of their lineage, faced the quiet scorn of their peers. The Baron became a pariah, isolated by the very wealth and power he had so ruthlessly pursued, forced to live with the chilling silence of a community that had finally found its voice. His fall was not through legal decree, but through the crushing weight of public conscience, a legacy irrevocably tainted, his reputation reduced to ashes. The town, stripped bare of its comfortable illusions, grappled with the full, raw truth. The air was thick with difficult conversations, hushed apologies exchanged between neighbors who had long suspected but remained silent. There was a collective outpouring of shame and sorrow, a desperate need to atone for decades of complicity. In a poignant, community-wide effort, a simple, weathered wooden bench was placed by the tracks at the station, dedicated to Elias. Engraved upon it were words not of sorrow, but of enduring loyalty and unfulfilled promise, a silent testament to the man they had failed. It became a place not just for waiting trains, but for quiet reflection, a symbol of their communal commitment to remember and to finally honor the Cowboy's forgotten dreams. And Thunder. For 11 years, his daily pilgrimage had been a stark, unanswered question, a poignant echo of Elias's unfulfilled hope. But with the truth laid bare, with Elias's memory finally honored, something shifted within the magnificent horse. One morning, as the familiar whistle of the approaching train pierced the desert air, Thunder walked to the station as always. But instead of standing rigidly, eyes fixed on the horizon, he approached the new bench. He lowered his head, nudging the weathered wood gently, a soft whinny escaping him. Then, instead of his usual vigil, he turned, and with a quiet dignity, walked back towards the open range, his gait lighter, his purpose seemingly fulfilled. His visits didn't cease entirely, but they transformed. They became acts of peaceful remembrance, no longer a desperate wait for what would never arrive, but a quiet affirmation of enduring loyalty, now finally at peace. Lily, watching this subtle, profound shift, found her own emotional closure. Her investigation, initially a professional curiosity, had transformed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had come to the dusty railway town seeking to solve a puzzle, but she had discovered a deeper connection to community, an unwavering empathy for the silenced, and a renewed understanding of her own purpose as a social worker. This place, once just a case study, had become a crucible, forging within her a stronger resolve, a profound sense of having brought not just justice, but also healing. The railway town, with its sun-baked secrets and resilient spirit, was no longer just a stopping point. It was where she found the beginning of her own significant change, a place where she had truly listened. The ending was not a Hollywood fairy tale, but a distinctly human one. The wounds of betrayal and neglect, though exposed, would never fully vanish. Some scars would always remain, etched into the town's collective memory. Yet, the truth, like the desert rain after a long drought, brought a different kind of peace. A quiet understanding that allowed the community to finally breathe, to mourn properly, and to begin the long, slow process of healing. The story of Elias and Thunder became a cautionary tale, a legend whispered not with shame, but with hard-won wisdom, a reminder of the profound impact of promises kept and broken. It was a testament to memory, to the enduring power of unfulfilled dreams, and to the quiet strength found in uncovering forgotten truths. Elias's past, Thunder's present vigil, and Lily's future path were inextricably linked, a powerful narrative of interconnected lives and the profound impact of even the smallest acts of hope